to the Cranberry Cornstalk YouTube channel, a channel where we share our love for primitive decor. And welcome to our little hometown of Worthington, Pennsylvania, a place I've always called home. I spent a lot of my childhood here, and it's the kind of town where neighbors look out for one another, where farmers lend a hand in the hard times, and they come together to celebrate the good ones. It just felt like the perfect place to open a little store of my own, a space where I can share the things that I've been making and loving for years. I've always been drawn to the primitive and folk art decor. There's just something about it. It's a sense of comfort and history, of simple beauty. I love creating it so much that I had to finally start sharing it. I simply couldn't keep it all in my own home anymore. I just don't have enough wall space to decorate with it. Over the years, I've sold at festivals, I've taught at art classes, and even shared my work through ministry, offering a message, and then creating it in a way to connect and bring joy. But having a place right here in Worthington feels different. It feels like home. The little building in town was renovated after I talked to the owner and talked him into giving it a new life, and thankfully he agreed to let me fill it with my handmade goods. Now it's a cozy spot where you'll find my candles, hearthside candles, jar candles, and melts, along with my soaps. We have primitive dolls that you typically won't find anywhere else, and a ton of artwork that depicts the farm life, because we are a cornstalk company, we live in the country. We also have a little boutique with all kinds of beautiful things to wear that we found just perfect for our little store. We've even added a coffee and chocolate nook, because honestly, what lady doesn't want a little bit of coffee and enjoying chocolate while she shops? And that brings me, all of that in history brings me to our week's vlog. I just thought I'd share a little bit of how I got to where I am in case you did not see our previous videos. But if you'd like to see the unfolding of all of the things I just described, please go back and check out our videos. I'll just warn you that they're not very expert or professional looking, because I'm learning as I go. I've been doing this for a while, but I don't seem to get better at vlogging. I see beautiful vlogs on YouTube that I can't even come close to matching, but nonetheless, here we are, and this week we're going to show you how we make our soaps. So I'll let the music play and let you watch how we make our handmade soaps. But don't go anywhere after the soaps, because I'm going to share with you some items I made, a chick doll for spring, and some primitive carrots. So I make each bar of soap the old-fashioned way, blending all of those natural oils previously listed and the rich butters in small batches right here in the shop by hand. I like to add simple, comforting ingredients like ground coffee in some of the soaps, Others will have things like oatmeal, honey and milk oatmeal. Things like that make it feel a bit more like it's homemade. Then once everything comes together, we pour it into this kind of mold that you see here, the plastic rubbery mold. I pour it into that and I let it cure, usually overnight, and then cut it into bars like this. After the bars are cut, we let it sit and cure for another 4 weeks, and at that time, it makes all the difference, creating a gentle, long-lasting bar with a soft, creamy lather that's simple and honest. It's a simple, honest way to make a little everyday comfort with a warm scent and a cozy, natural feel. Okay, guys, so at this point, I know you're going to kill me. I always hear the comments about not going through the entire process of doll making. But you've got to understand, I make dolls because I get excited. I start making them, and halfway into it, I'm like, oh, I think my audience would like to see how I made this doll. So at this point, I've already made a chick doll head and body. Sorry about that. But I did capture some video from here out. I started to, all the clothing fabric that I decided I was going to make her clothes out of, I stained it in your typical coffee stain. You can make from instant coffee, some cinnamon, and water. You just put a ratio into however much darkness you want it to be. I keep these old craft pans in the oven just to make stuff on. You can see, of course, I make things every day, all the time. It gets used more for drying fabrics than it does for making food, unfortunately. I love to bake, but this is more fun. Actually, I love to eat, but this is more fun. I just take my cloth, whatever cloth I'm going to dress the doll in, and I soak it in my coffee stain, cinnamon. You can find recipes all over the place. You'll have to change the ingredients to make it your own. How dark do you want it? How grungy do you want it? If you put it in the oven like this, it will be more of a watery stain. You can see on this doll's head, I did her just like that. I put her in the oven, and you can see the watermarks on her. If you don't like that look, you can always hang to dry or dry it in a dryer. That's a little bit different look. Just experiment until you see what kind of grungy look that you're looking for. This fabric, I believe, was in the oven as well. But I made her top with some burlap just because all I needed was a tippy top to make her arms, her little wings, and her chest, because it's going to be covered in the dress. And now here you see, of course, I skipped that part too. All I did was gather the top of the dress stitches, pull the string to make it tight, and I just hot glued with a hot glue gun that dress onto the doll and made a little headscarf out of just a triangle of the same fabric as well. Again, I'm going to try to get more detailed video, but I did make this nest. I just found a bunch of the tangle vine, some straw type stringy stuff, and I just kept forming it into a type of nest. I used a little bit of hot glue to help hold it. It was a little difficult to figure out how I was going to get her to hold it without it falling to pieces. I just kept tangling and twisting until I made some sort of a nest. And I thought once I got it into her little wings and tucked it onto her lap, it might be easier to get it to stay together. It would form like a little cup for her little wings to hold the twigs all in place. I did go back and touch up a little bit too, but the main thing is try to be patient. Let the glue dry before, or cool down before you move on to the next step, because it'll just keep falling apart. And I like the really primitive looking faces, the grungy faces. So, but first I'll mention her scarf was just torn out of the same fabric as the skirt that I made. I just tore a little triangle to keep the edges rough, and I painted her eyes dark before I put the eyes on, because I like that look on the primitive dolls, the darker eyes, circles. So I went ahead and painted eyes on, painted her little beak, and then I did end up adding little plastic eggs. Now, all of the ones I seem to find in the craft areas are bright and just not primitive. So I did grunge them up a little bit with some brown paint to give them the primitive look, and just hot glued and tucked them into her nest here and there. I probably could have used a little bit bigger eggs for this nest. The proportion maybe was a little bit too small, but that's what I had on hand, and you know how it goes. You gotta use up some of your stash before you keep adding to it, or what's the point? But I did add these little eggs to her nest, and they turned out really cute. At this point, I just wanted to add a little more grunge to her. I love the gauzy look, so I ended up tying her sleeves and making a little cuff at the bottom of her sleeves. That gauze just makes it so much more prim. So I did add, and I stained the gauze with a little bit of coffee stain as well. and added it to, I just tied it around the end of her sleeves to make a cup and tied it in a knot. And now we're moving on to the primitive carrots. I just made a triangle. Again, guys, I'm so sorry. I'm going to try to do better at this, at the whole entire process from beginning to end. But I just made a triangle, glued the edge, sewed the edge and made myself a triangle carrot. And I stuffed it really tight with this wool stuffing so that the end of the carrot kind of curled around. I found this primitive yellowy orange color. And I just stuffed them really tight with that wool stuffing. I don't like the polyester type filling you can get at the local craft shops. I feel like it's too slippery and just not what I'm looking for. And here again, I made my coffee stain with cinnamon, and I had to make it a little bit bigger instead of the bowl that I had. I usually keep that bowl on hand all the time for projects on a whim. I stuck them in the oven, dipped them in that coffee water, stuffed them all in the oven, and let the steam just dehydrate. You can see they're pretty wet here. I just dehydrated them. But oh my gosh, they turned out so cute. I found some really primitive greens to put on the end of each one. I just stuck it in the end, hot glued it, and then wrapped that jute around the end with another little spot of hot glue to hold the greenery in. You can find these carrots in our retail store at 159 East Main Street in Worthington, Pennsylvania, along with many other handmade items and gifts. But first of all, I want to just say thank you for stopping at the Cranberry Cornstalk YouTube channel. Make sure you hit like, the thumbs up, and if you subscribe, then it will show you the next time we release another video.